The 90s, you had it all. You had the washed jeans, you had the plaid shirts, you had the Seinfeld yelling at you for no reason whatsoever. You had Friends, you had Frasier, you had, I'm just listing off things from the 90s now. You had Snap, the wrist things that snapped onto your wrists.
Yeah,
And they're back.
you had gel pens, and you had Y2K swag at the end of the 90s.
Zach
you
Keast
know?
was born.
Zach Keist. I was also born.
I was already
You were
alive.
also born.
You just had to have been there. We can talk about the 90s all day, but in the end, you just had to be there.
It was a cool time. It was a not cool time. It was the 90s. Hey everyone, what's up? We're back talking about the best movies of the 90s. And wouldn't it be perfect if our best of the 90s episode was a clip show? Think about something that is so 90s. Clip shows.
Oh, man.
You're actually going to do that?
Yeah, that's for real happening.
Oh, God. Okay. I was like,
we started this
God.
journey at the beginning of the pandemic, or right before the pandemic, I think.
What are you guys most excited to see? Are you most excited to see our haircuts through the progression of the pandemic?
Or
are you
lack
most
thereof?
excited to see? Are you excited to see how Zach botched this list? I don't know. I'm excited for both equally.
I'm excited
Pretty
for
excited.
Zach's mop hairdo that he had for
Oh,
quite
it
a
was
few of these.
bad. I said this before. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, I'm not going to cut my hair until it's gone. 2 years later, it's still here, so I got my hair cut.
I think people are going to be like, whoa, this is a very normal top 10 list. Because it is. I mean, it's my personal top 10 is much more indie focused, whereas Zach's is more Coen Brothers and Tarantino focused.
Yeah.
And JD is like Toy Stories, Jurassic Park, nothing else done.
But also my real list would totally have been like Hackers, Hook, Mighty Ducks. Just movies that got no respect over the last 2 years of us doing this.
It's Toy Story. It is the most influential, powerful, emotional Pixar series of all time. I personally only like the first one. I don't like any of the other Toy Story movies, but this one set the bar so high for me as a kid. I think it's partly nostalgia, and by the time the other ones came out, I was too old to like.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, fine.
But Toy Story, when it first came out, man, just hits you like a ton of bricks if you're a kid. And you're just like, oof.
That they were kind of like, we want to make this fully 3D animated movie, and everyone was like, well, never going to happen. And Disney came in and helped, and it was insane. It was huge. And then, this is kind of the reason why we don't see like traditional 2D animation anymore. I don't put it totally on Pixar, but I mean, like, it was huge.
And if you have a kid and they're old enough to watch Toy Story, they will be enamored by it. I mean, I showed my daughter it, and, kids will be kids and they run around back and forth and whatever. But when there's certain scenes that come up, like when Buzz Lightyear first shows up, or when he tries to fly, or, the car scenes, man, they just capture you so quickly.
I don't think I've ever felt more emotionally drained than when Buzz Lightyear tries to really fly, when he has that moment of realization and Randy Newman's song is playing, and I'm just like, you just take my heart out and stomp all over it. It's ridiculous.
Reservoir Dogs, I mean, is that surprising?
It had to be.
Yeah, it had to be, because not only are we white dudes and it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie. We're white dudes, and that's basically his audience.
We've all worn suits before, and we've all been like, what if we've all played with the idea, what if we just sat in the diner with our friends and just talked
about Madonna
and talked about something so ridiculous where one person was so wrong, but somehow he kept arguing. And he convinced other people to be on his side.
Everyone after this was either making a movie on a low budget, or like playing with the narrative, or doing a heist movie. Those are the three things people took away from that movie. Like, okay, what if we just changed the narrative? What if we made it's like, it's crazy just how, like, it's almost annoying, because you're like, God, like, Reservoir Dogs almost, like, pretty much ruined movies for other people at the time. It's so good that it ruined so
Also,
so
an
good.
amazing soundtrack. Can't talk about Reservoir Dogs without the soundtrack.
Film nerds would notice if after repeat viewings, and as part of Tarantino criticism, it's like, yeah, he like borrows a lot of shots and a lot of motifs from old movies, but that's because Tarantino is basically the cable guy. He grew up watching movies and he's influenced by it, and he's just want to pay homage to all this stuff. And Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, they're just like chock full of just old films that just honoring old films, and it's just, man, it's just
That's the best description I've ever heard of Quentin Tarantino.
yeah. I mean,
It's
he's
just-
the
it's-
cable
it's-
guy.
he's
He
the cable
is.
guy, yeah.
He really is.
And he knows how to stack a cast. I mean, we're talking Tim Roth, talking Steve Buscemi, and Michael Madsen, and
Harvey Keitel.
Harvey Keitel. Like, it's crazy that's not the first name that you jump to, but you're like, yeah.
You know, this one made our number one because we haven't talked about it. And it is, especially with James Cameron making his movies, he only makes one a decade at this point now. But when he dropped Terminator 2, it was like he changed the way an action movie was made. The same way The Matrix did it is the way Terminator 2 did it. And it's like the movie from start to end is just a full-on ride. And you think about the graphics for the time, because this is pre-Jurassic Park. It's like, and it's just like, when you watch this as a kid, you're like, oh, this is real life. And you would do the T-1000 run as a kid, and you would try and chase your friends down. Arnold is Arnold, but in the most stoic way that you could ever imagine.
He's the good guy in this one.
Yeah, it just like Cameron does that thing, but he did it to his own movie where he like changes the genre and just like makes it even better. Like, it is bananas. And it's like the use of like practical and those like futuristic visual effects that they were able to just blend so well. Like, it is awesome. And like like Sarah Connor's like just changing her character drastically. Like, it is so good. And I will tell you, when I have my nephew has this Nerf shotgun, and every time I have it, I always try to do the thing, you know, how Arnold reloads it in the hallway, or how he does it on the motorcycle. Come on.
I mean, we could talk about it for hours. Idiots on the internet have already talked about it for hours. Why do us idiots have to talk about it anymore? It's a great movie.
Good.
And honestly, listen, maybe controversial. It's probably one of the last great Cameron movies we got. So
No, he made True Lives after this.
oh,
so.
that's right. I'm sorry. I apologize. It also is on our list. But yes, you're right. So the movie before his last great movie. So
You all know where it is. We all know. It's got dinosaurs. It's got dino DNA.
Dino DNA.
Dino DNA. It's currently on Netflix along with The Lost World, and I've watched both of them. But it's also got sexy Jeff Goldblum, the sexiest version of Jeff Goldblum, more than in The Fly when he comes out naked.
Agreed. It's got Sam Jackson.
It does. And Wayne Knight.
We're talking about just beautiful people in a beautiful movie. It's called Jurassic Park.
Oh, man.
And it holds up to this day.
Oh, man, it does.
The graphics are finally, like, slowly, you're finally noticing, like, oh, those aren't real. But when you're a kid, even up to, like, before HD TV came out, you're like, these are real. They used real dinosaurs for this movie.
You can't tell me that the scene when the T-Rex is trying to get through the Jeep in the rain, that looks so beautiful, like, still. And it's 26 years old.
It's a great, like, adventure movie. It's a great adaptation. It's just all around the best movie probably ever made, almost.
Almost. It could be, like, if it showed up in people's top 10, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, especially if it's number one in someone's.
Do you, though, find it ridiculous that velociraptors could open doors?
No, not really, because at the time, the theory was velociraptors were highly intelligent. I mean, that's still the general theory. So, and it's a movie. So you take that.
Yes.
And also,
I think the doors were easier. I mean, it wasn't like a
No.
it wasn't like
I
a
think it was a
regular
handle, if I remember right.
handle.
Yeah.
And you cannot tell me that you have not gone up to a child and pretended to just like pretend to have a velociraptor claw and just
Just gut them.
Yeah.
Fun fact: my mom was pregnant with me when she saw Jurassic Park.
Dino DNA, am I right?
Dino DNA.
Dino DNA.
It is the film white boy's dream movie.
We'll
Of
see it on
course,
every college room wall.
No, it wasn't. That's Reservoir Dogs and Scarface, but it's close. It's high up there. I think I may still have it.
we're of course talking about Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino's sophomore movie, and it just built off of what Reservoir Dogs did and just did it even more and better. The nonlinear storytelling, John Travolta comeback, Samuel L. Jackson, Tim Roth,
Uma Thurman.
Bruce, when he still gave a crap.
Yeah,
Come on.
he tries in this movie, and he tries really well.
Steve Buscemi as a waiter. I mean, you could go on and on. Ving Rhames with a weird Band-Aid on the back of his head, but you don't know why it's there.
Pulp Fiction is a film class movie where you're like, this is nonlinear storytelling. This is a MacGuffin. This is just like,
This
is like
changed screenwriting too. Like
Yeah.
The way people talk in this movie, every single movie tried to copy, and some did okay. Guy Ritchie is the biggest version of this, where he just took that and made it worse.
It just changed cinema for a long time. Took a while for us to recover.
good and bad.
Yeah.
The Truman Show.
He should have won an Oscar. He carries this movie, and he's like whimsical, but at the same time deeply sad. On top of that, Ed Harris should have won an Oscar for this. He doesn't show up for like 30 minutes into the movie, but man, he dominates the screen when he's on, because he's the God character. And on top of that, they somehow like saw that reality TV was going to be ungodly popular, and it still is. You never root for someone so hard than whenever he's on the boat and Ed Harris is just trying to kill him with the weather. He's like, no, survive the weather. And we are the audience of the people and watching the Truman Show. Like, come on, you can do it. And it reminds me of Uncut Gems whenever Adam Sandler's watching the basketball game.
To me, it's like when I think about like this year, when I think about these like last few years of the 90s, I think about this like beautiful movie. I think about like how well it's constructed. The writing is strong. The performances are great because they have to ride a line of both serious and funny and charming and sweet and heartfelt. And I know now like it would be looked at like so cheesy and so like, oh, okay, like yeah, real sweet, blah. But like back then, like it just like did something to you. And like the way the music is played, and just to also think about like, is all the music we're hearing, is that from the show? Is that supposed to, it's like there's just so many ways to think about this movie, that also from someone who loved movies and loved TV, like it just, there's so much to offer that like even now when I watch it, I still unpack things. I mean, even when I drive in roundabouts, like this is what I think about, like it's just, this movie is so great and heartfelt, and I love it. And I think it really is not just one of the best of like 98. I think it's one of the best of the 90s. So
The Truman Show is highly influential, not only on reality TV, but on filmmaking as well, because we've seen similar ideas come out since. I mean, The Matrix has a big similar plot point as The Truman Show does. And like JD said, is like the late 90s was all about introspection and about thinking about the world we live in. And so, yeah. And number one, we have Good Will Hunting.
I like them apples. I can't do it.
How do you like them? Those good old Massachusetts Boston boys, Ben Affleck and Matt
Boston
Damon.
boys for life.
Who wrote this movie, and that blows my mind every time I think about it.
And it's one of the first major movies that was like, okay, it's okay for men to have emotions, because that's basically the plot of the movie. It's like telling Will Hunting, he's like, you can cry. It's okay to accept your feelings as a man and know that you can cry and be with other men and have emotions and do all that stuff. And Robin Williams, therapist dude, is like the best therapist I've ever seen in any movie. And Gus Van Sant, you know, he followed this up with a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, but still, Gus Van Sant is like one of the best indie movie makers ever. And to do something like this, just catapulted the whole cast.
That scene with Ben Affleck where he's talking about, he does a speech where, you know, I show up every day hoping that you're not going to be here. I mean, that gets to me every time. That like, it's okay to feel, and also to show your friends, like, you know, it's okay. Like, it's just like such a deeper level of friendship to me. I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, I'm getting now like still emotional thinking about those moments, and that just means like that's how great it is. That like, I mean, almost 25 years later, and I'm like, a baby over it. So I think these videos sometimes divulge into us just naming a cast.
Yeah, naming the cast,
which is my favorite part, because we're all struggling to be like, what should we say about this? And we're like, Don Cheadle's in it, Mark Wahlberg's in it.
Fargo, the Coen Brothers movie.
This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And as Michael said about whenever he moved from Boston to Arkansas, they watched Sling Blade. I moved from Texas to Minnesota, and my dad was like, we're going to watch Fargo, and let's see how these people are. And I'm like, where are we going? There's murderers, but they're so nice about it. I would argue it's perfect, where it's like every single part of this movie is great. And Frances McDormand, her performance is probably one of the best like leading actresses in movie history.
And it's on the TV series. I haven't watched the new season, but at least the first three, I mean, like, are incredible. The first one is like loosely, you know, it kind of has those same weird, you know, it's got like elements of the movie.
Great movie, Fargo, amazing.
And then finally, the reason we did this whole episode is, you probably guessed it, you took the pills. Took both of them. I don't know why at the same time. The Matrix.
Yeah, The Matrix. This is not an exaggeration. The Matrix like kind of changed my life.
Yeah, it really.
In a weird, I mean, not like in a positive way probably, but it's more of just like nothing. I remember like watching it and nothing was the same.
Yeah,
it ruined action movies because it's just
so. It ruined. No, it didn't just ruin action movies. It ruined pop culture for me.
Yeah. And the great thing about Matrix is at all times it was corny.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was kind of wacky.
Yeah.
But it was also kind of revolutionary.
Yeah. And philosophical. Like
all
rolled into one.
And really, really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, if your dad didn't do an Agent Smith impression after this movie, what were you even doing in 1999?
Or if they didn't buy the glasses.
Or if you didn't, if they didn't, as a joke, buy glasses that weren't really glasses, but just glasses to put over your glasses. I mean, like, you weren't even living.
I already mentioned the name Martin Scorsese. I think you can figure out what number one is.
Yep.
Cape Fear.
Yep. That came out next year.
Next year's will be Cape Fear.
Number one. Every Martin Scorsese movie, number one. But this is Goodfellas. It's basically what everyone wants all Martin Scorsese movies to be. Yeah. But this is like him at his peak. The cinematography is amazing. The story's amazing. The editing's amazing. Music's amazing. The acting's amazing. Literally everything about this movie is perfect. And the fact that it didn't win the Oscar is criminal.
It's absolutely frustrating.
They should be arrested.
They really should.
What won that year?
Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves. Not on our list. Look,
and you hate Kevin Costner.
I hate Kevin Costner.
But like, this is, I think, the first big thing for me that I'm like, that's film history in a time that I was at least kind of about to be around. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, this is huge. I know, like, Scorsese's always been around, but I feel like this is like a moment that, like, oh yeah, Scorsese, you know? Yeah. Like, and then he goes on to do even more stuff. You know, like, he's a dude who's like always reminding the people that he's there. Like, oh hey, I'm over here making good stuff. It's even reached that status of like, it's ruined like other gangster movies too. Yeah. It's ruined a whole genre of movies. And that's how you know it's one of the greats.
Exactly.
If it just ruined everything later, you're like, ugh, it's not good.
Exactly. It's like the Citizen Kane of gangster movies.
There's also the Godfather fans versus the Goodfellas fans. Both are great. Both very different movies. Mm-hmm. But which one?
I think Goodfellas was like, let's take gangster movies to their absolute apex.
Yeah.
And let's deliver you the absolute best, because Godfather sort of idolizes gangster a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas Goodfellas is like
This is awful.
it kind of sucks, and you're kind of
Yeah.
terrible human beings.
Well, and it's Godfather romantic. It's a romantic movie. It treats that thing that subject matter so romantically. Where Goodfellas, it like rides a line. We're like, yeah, it would be cool to be a gangster, and then someone gets murdered. You're like, I don't know anymore.
And with that said,
What a
Wipe
dumb
Star-
list.
Star wipe. What a bunch of idiots, huh? You know that old adage that the older you get, the wiser you get. Not true. Not
Mhm.
true. We exist 2 years later, dumber than we were when we started.
I think
Much-
it's these
much dumber.
videos, honestly. I think that every video we do slowly chips away at our sanity and our sense
And our credibility.
and definitely our credibility. Yeah. It's shocking that we won some awards this year. Not us as a channel, of course, but
That'll never
just
happen.
just a disclaimer. Never gonna happen. But yeah, it's just what a wild ride of stupidity it's been.
Un esercito di prodi